こでお前を倒す。
The all-out war finally begins! Welcome back to another My Hero Academia anime vs manga video, breaking down Season 7, Episode 5, titled Let You Down, sharing the same title as Chapter 343 of the manga, referencing how Aoyama will be letting down All for One by betraying him at the end of the episode. Now, the episode begins with Toga walking into her old home that's long been abandoned by her parents. When she walks into her old room, we see a flashback of Himiko Toga sleeping in her bed, having dreams of a bird digging its way inside of her body, dancing and making her bleed all over. This entire scene seems to be referencing a wet dream, as Toga, being a teenager, her quirk is pretty much the embodiment of teenage hormones, as she states that the dream she had was so pleasant and made her extremely happy, as she views blood as something romantic, making the dream a little extra special for her. Moving on, Toga states that her parents abandoned everything. Outside the home, Dabi confronts Toga about her getting caught up in emotions. Toga tells him that she was simply curious, and Dabi asked if she was sure that she's ready for what's coming, with Toga stating that it's too late to be asking that now. Dabi is satisfied with her answer and says that if this is the case, then let's laugh. People live to laugh, and in turn burns down Toga's old home. Toga here almost looks sad at the fact that her old home is being burned down, and this is most likely because the house represented her old life. It's then revealed that back during the Paranormal Liberation War arc, after Twice had died, Dabi managed to get a vial of his blood before Makia had taken the league, and she will be the one to keep Twice's Sad Man's parade marching. After the opening, we head to the villain's hideout, where we see that Shigaraki's body is mutating in a way where a bunch of fingers are now able to grow out of his body. All for One tells Spinner that Shigaraki's body is overcoming the quirk Doomsday Theory. In the world of My Hero Academia, it's been theorized by Garaki himself that as time goes on, quirks will grow stronger at a faster rate, far surpassing what the human body will evolve to be able to adapt and handle those quirks' strengths. In the episode, we see Shigaraki, thanks to his bioengineered body, he is able to overcome and control the result of the quirk Doomsday Theory. This entire scene also acts as a major reference to the 1988 anime film Akira, with Shigaraki being a parallel to the character Tetsuo, where in the film we see Tetsuo get stronger and stronger, but at a great cost, as his powers become more unstable and uncontrollable, exactly what is theorized to happen to quirks and humans in the quirk Doomsday Theory. But unlike Shigaraki, in the end, Tetsuo can't control his body and becomes a giant monster. Continuing on, as Skeptic explains to Spinner that a high portion of criminals are heteromorphs and that heroes targeted heteromorphs to a point where plenty of heteromorphs hold deep grudges against the so-called heroes. The anime adds in a shot of Spinner surrounded by heteromorphs, as well as a shot of Spinner and Stain, showing how Spinner being involved in the league has made an impact on other heteromorphs to follow him, viewing him as their leader. This entire scene acts as a commentary on police brutality and the targeting of minority groups, as heteromorphs in My Hero Academia are a minority group amongst quirk users. Spinner tells Skeptic that he isn't here to be some big messiah serving a great cause. He is then cut off and is handed a device that will rally all of the heteromorphs to their side. Spinner reluctantly agrees and takes the device, as he's really only here for Shigaraki, thus becoming a reluctant hero for Shigaraki and the heteromorphs, as he puts the device towards his face to rally the other heteromorphs. Here, the anime doesn't adapt the spread of all of the heteromorphs in the ruins of Japan, which I'll admit is a little disappointing, as this spread did have a cool cameo from the sludge villain that appeared in the first chapter of My Hero Academia. At UA, it's revealed that All for One has spies within the residential area. Their names are never revealed in the anime, but in the volume 35 extra page, their names are Tajima and Mihara. Their plan via All for One is to stir things up with the people who are still discontented with what's been going on, so that UA UA will once again be an inhospitable place for Izuku Midoriya. Here the anime doesn't adapt the panels showing the other spies within UA. After this, the anime adds in some scenes of Deku, Shoto, and Bakugo taking down jailbreakers during the search effort. At the Heights Alliance dorms, the anime only shows the 1A dorms and doesn't show the others like in the manga. Class 1A all come back to the dorms exhausted from the search effort. Deku attempts to talk to Ochako, but All Might and Naomasa walk in to inform select individuals and discuss their final plans for the all-out war. Here the anime skips over about 2 pages worth of panels showing the top 3 pros and Ragdoll discussing the plans with Endeavor looking sad reading over them. Aizawa and Monoma looking at Kurogiri through a window, which was meant to be a setup for what happens at the end of the episode with the portals. Aoyama sitting in a cell, and Bakugo, Shoto, and Deku being told the plan. I will say I'm not a fan of this not being adapted, but I'm sure some of these will be making their way back into the anime in later episodes. The next day, Nezu makes an announcement to the citizens at UA. In the manga, we never actually get the announcement from Nezu. It actually just starts off with the civilians talking about the announcement made by Nezu earlier on in the day. The villain spy Tajima says that because the heroes made this announcement that resulted in Deku leaving UA anyways, made their plan so much easier, guaranteeing All for One's success. After this, everyone from 1A says goodbye to their loved ones and the civilians. We even get an added shot of Deku waving goodbye as they all leave to the makeshift fortress called Troy. Keeping up with Greek mythology references, Troy is the name of a city that was attacked during the Trojan War in ancient Greece. In Greek mythology, Homer describes Troy as well-founded, strong-built, and well-walled, as it withstood a 10-year siege. Troy did eventually fall due to the Trojans being tricked by the Trojan horse that held Greek soldiers within it. Here, Class 1A entering Troy is meant to act as the hero's Trojan horse in the upcoming all-out war. Before entering into Troy, we get an added scene of Shoto with his head down as Kirishima, Bakugo, and Ida all worry about him replacing the panel of the hallway inside of Troy. Deku and Ochako finally have a chance to talk as they both talk about their respective villains to each other. Ochako says that she can't forgive them for what they've done, but Toga is a person too and doesn't know the first thing about her as she wants to understand her villain, and Deku agrees as he can't ignore the crying child he saw within Shigaraki. Here the anime adds the scene of Tenko crying within Shigaraki. Switching over to Shoto, we see Kirishima, Bakugo, and Ida are all shown to be comforting Shoto, being there for him as he deals with going against his brother Toya in the all-out war. We then get an added shot of Deku and Ochako looking at the city as they both state that they'll put an end to the League. 3 days later, the day of All for One's plan begins. Here the anime doesn't adapt the panels of All for One saying, "Shall we?" though he does say it later in the episode. In the cave, All for One states that during the advent of the extraordinary, he stole a quirk and combined it with others to boost its efficiency, where he is able to tell when a person has the slightest bit of ill will towards him, so lies do not work on him. The original owner of the quirk was a disappointment of a man, but his descendants did much better for themselves, and by some twist of fate, one of the man's descendants wound up working with All Might to threaten him. This descendant being Detective Tsukauchi Naomasa, as his family lineage have quirks that gives them the ability to tell when people are lying, as his sister Makoto has a polygraph quirk. Also, fun fact, during Jump Festa 2024, Horikoshi revealed that Tsukauchi was originally supposed to be a spy working under All for One. So it's cool that Horikoshi still was able to keep a thread to this scrapped plotline by having All for One use a quirk that once belonged to someone in Naomasa's family. All for One makes contact with Aoyama's parents, talking in code to have Aoyama take Deku somewhere isolated from the heroes tomorrow. Once the call is over, he can't detect any ill will from Aoyama's mother, meaning that she is telling him the truth. The next day, Aoyama takes Deku to an isolated area, and Aoyama tells Deku All for One's plan and what's happening to the rest of the world right now. In a villainous tone, Aoyama tells Deku that the sudden crash in value of yen forced Japanese Japanese corporations into bankruptcy. The coordinated uprisings of villains caused the damage to spread worldwide. Now the world faces a crisis much like the Great Depression or the period around the advent of quirks, causing a record amount of unemployment, loss of faith in currencies, bringing an era of total chaos. While nations who've abandoned Japan prioritize themselves, lacking the strength to implement long-term policies, Japan's society devolves into one scrambling for short-term safety. In a world like that, if someone appears in a country impacted by lack of water with a quirk that can produce the water needed, or let's say electricity or gas or just strength, the world will move into a state of decline and chaos, forming the foundation for a single remarkable individual to take the initiative, to become the world's demon lord. And all that All For One needs to do now is upset the balance somewhere, and his plan will come to fruition. As Aoyama explains this to Deku, we get a ton of added shots showing yen crashing, Japan being abandoned, and shots of the essential utilities in the world when All For One is shown to have the world in the palm of his hands. Deku of course disagrees with this, as the world still has heroes to stop this plan from happening. All For One then comes down from the sky behind Aoyama. All For One congratulates Aoyama for bringing Deku to him as Deku gears up for a fight. All For One tells Aoyama that he wasn't entirely accurate describing his plans, but he did good. Deku gets upset at Aoyama, and that's when Aoyama turns around and hits All For One with his naval laser, betraying him. The whole time Aoyama and Deku had been acting as if Deku was being set up by Aoyama. Aoyama exclaims that he will fight All For One for everyone's sake. Disappointed, All For One wonders how they were able to get past lying to him. Not stressing too much about it, One For All is in front of him, and he knows the heroes are dispersed across the country and won't be able to help Deku. That's when All For One activates his gloop warp, warping in Shigaraki, the League, and all of the other villains. Kurogiri's portal begins opening behind Aoyama, believing that Kurogiri came to help, further putting Deku into a corner, making it easier for him to take One For All. That's when multiple portals begin opening with heroes all coming out of them, as Aoyama tells All For One that his parents also told him that All For One's biggest fear is the world learning that Japan isn't finished, fearing the light and hope that will come with recovery, and Japan inspiring the world to unite once more, and that today is the day where he falls. Here we get an added shot of Deku, with the episode ending with the all-out war beginning as all of our heroes come out of portals to stand with Deku and Aoyama against All For One and the League. I will say the portal scene in the manga definitely looked a lot better, but it was still so hyped to see in the anime. The entire portal scene in itself is of course a massive reference to Avengers Endgame, and the portal scene where all of the Avengers come in to fight Thanos and his army in the final battle. Now this episode adapted a total of 3 chapters, them being chapters 341, 342, and 343. This episode was amazing from beginning to end. That finally brings us to the beginning of the all-out war, and sadly getting us closer to the end of My Hero Academia. Let me know your thoughts on the episode. Did you enjoy the portal scene? Let me know everything in the comment section below. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to Detroit smash that like button down below, and if you are new to the Kitoroki channel, then be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so that you don't miss any My Hero Academia Season 7 breakdowns. With that said, I'll see you all in the next one.